I hope you guys are doing well. Okay, and Jai Shankar to everybody. So, as we are discussing about the summary of Lakshmikkant'S polity, okay. So, let's start. Today we will discuss about Government of India Act of 1858, then Indian Councils Act of 1861, and at the end we will be talking about Indian Councils Act of 1892. So let's go ahead. Government of India Act is also known as Act for the Good Government of India. Okay, Government of India Act. 1958. Okay, this is also known as Act for the Good Government. Of India. Okay, so this question may arise in your examination, that which act is known as Act for the Good Government of India. So you have to mark Government of India Act of 1858. Okay, and what happened? Rule of company was replaced by rule of crown. As we know that East India Company came India for trade purpose, but later it became as a ruling company. It started ruling over Indian territories. Okay, so now onward, rule of company will be replaced by the rule of crown. Means the rule of a company which is happening at that time, that will be replaced by the crown's rule. Okay, means crown's direct control will be on Indian territories. Okay, so rule of company that was replaced by rule of crown in Government of India Act of 1858. Basically, this act, Government of India Act, came after the revolt of 1857. So, the British government realized that they have to take some initiative, some steps, so that this kind of happening, this kind of situation again should not be allowed in Indian dominion. Okay, so this is also a very good point. And listen, in regulating Act of 73 of 1773, what we saw, we talked about that Governor General, that was known as Governor General of Bengal, in 1773 Act. Okay, 1773 Regulating Act made this provision that Governor General now onward will be known as Governor General of Bengal. But here, after Government of India Act 1858, basically Government of India Act made a provision that Governor General of India will be known as Viceroy now onward. Okay, Viceroy became the agent of Crown. So Viceroy, he is the agent of Crown. So this particular act made this provision as well. Okay, and this act abolished the dual government of Pitt's India Act. Pitt's India Act of 1784. We have already talked about that. Pitt's India Act introduced dual government, that court of director and board of control. Okay, if you have not watched that lecture, you have to see previous lectures where we have talked about this Pitt's India Act of 1784, and I have elaborated COD and VOC at that time. Okay, as this series is for summary purpose, so everything will not be that much described. It will be concise to the point. Okay, and this act also ended the doctrine of lapse. And one more important thing, the Secretary of State was a member of British cabinet. Secretary of State, he is an important person. Secretary and the Secretary of State was the member of Parliament, was the member of British cabinet. He was the member of British cabinet. Okay, and ultimately he was the responsible to the British Parliament. So it established this particular act, this Government of India Act of 1858 established a 15-member Councils of India, a 15-member Council of India to assist the Secretary of State of India. Okay, so what it is doing so far, basically Government of India Act of 1858 introduced Secretary of State. Okay, he was a member of British cabinet and ultimately he was responsible for British Parliament as well. So to assist Secretary of State, a 15-member council was established. Okay, so this is also an important point. Secretary of State can be said in India as well as England. So it is time for another important council act, that is Indian Councils Act of 1861. Okay, and this Indian Councils Act of 1861 made some important provisions, like it initiated the process of decentralization by restoring legislative powers of Bombay and Madras. Okay, centralization of power, as we have discussed earlier, started from Regulating Act of 1773 onward, and it was at its peak. Okay, during I'm showing you Charter Act of 1813. Okay, so basically process of decentralization started by Indian Councils Act of 1861. Okay, what was the step that was taken towards decentralization of powers? Basically we are restored legislative powers to Bombay and Madras. Later it was taken away from Bombay and Madras, and it was completely vested in Governor General of Bengal only. Okay, so now onward, their legislative power will be restored. Okay, as it is mentioned over here, that legislative powers were taken away through Charter Act of 1833. Okay, but decentralization is now initiated by restoring the legislative power of Bombay and Madras presidency. So let's go ahead. And it introduced representative institution in India by associating Indians with the lawmaking process. Now onward, they made a provision that Indians can also participate in lawmaking process. Introduce representative institution in India by associating Indians with the lawmaking process. Viceroy nominated some Indians as non-official member of his expanded council. During Indian Council Act of 1861, it made a provision that Indian association will be there in lawmaking process. Okay, and Viceroy nominated some Indian as non-official member. This is important part. Some Indians were appointed as non-official member, okay, of his expanded council, and 3 Indians nominated were the Raja of Benares, the Maharaja of Patlada, and Sardinkar Rao. Okay, they were basically nominated as the non-official member of Viceroy's expanded council. Okay, and Indian Council Act 1861 empowered the Viceroy to issue ordinances during emergency. It made provision that if a situation arises when emergency comes into picture, then Viceroy will be commanding the situation, and he will be issuing ordinances during emergency. Okay, and this particular act also empowered the Viceroy to frame the rules of business. The same power is given to the President of India Act under Article 70. Okay, rules of business. He will be making rules of business, and now in present scenario, a same power is given to the President of India under Article of 1777. Under Article 77. New Legislative Council for Bengal, NWFP, and Punjab. And statutory recognition to portfolio system introduced by Lord Canning. So this question was asked in UPSC prelims. So this may again ask in some other competitive exams. But this is a good point. Statutory recognition of portfolio system introduced by Lord Canning. So last and not the least, we have to talk about Indian Council Act of 1892. Though the majority of official members were retained, the non-official members of the Indian Legislative Council were henceforth to be nominated by Bengal Chamber of Commerce. Okay, and the provincial legislative councils while the non-official members of the provincial council were to be nominated by certain local bodies such as university, district board, municipalities, beginning of representative system in India. Indirect election. So Indian Councils Act of 1892 is considered as the beginning of representative system in India, and it seems to introduce indirect elections in India basically. Okay, so in previous Indian Council Act of 1861 we talked about that Viceroy nominated some Indian as non-official member of his expanded council. Okay, so we are talking about that uh, as non-official member of Indian Legislative Council were to be nominated by Bengal Chamber of Commerce. Okay, non-official member of Indian Legislative Council. Basically, those members who were the part of Indian Council, Indian Legislative Council, they were nominated by Bengal Chamber of Commerce. And on the other hand, provincial legislative councils member, non-official member, they were nominated by certain local bodies such as university, direct board, municipalities, and this particular council act, Indian Council Act of 1892, this is introducing representative system in India. Okay, indirect election is also being introduced by this particular act of Indian Council Act of 1892. So council to have the power of discuss budget and of addressing question to the executive. So councils were given such powers that they can discuss budget and address question to the executive as well. So I hope you guys are liking this video very much, and I hope this will be beneficial in your UPSC journey, and best of luck, and go ahead. Okay, go ahead and achieve what you like, what you wish, what you want to be. Find your goal, stay happy, stay tuned. Thank you.